In a quiet corner of the world, beneath the vastness of a starlit sky, a story unfolded that would change human history forever. It wasn't written in the halls of kings or proclaimed by mighty empires, but whispered in the stillness of the night, in a place no one would have thought to look. It was there, in a humble manger, that Jesus, Isa عليه السلام, entered the world, not in grandeur but in grace, not in riches but in simplicity. His birth was not adorned by gold or guarded by soldiers. It was witnessed by the lowly, the sincere, and the forgotten. This is the story of the humble beginning of the one who would grow to guide hearts, heal souls, and remind mankind of its creator. Far away from the noise of the world, in the small town of Bethlehem, Maryam عليه السلام had come to the end of her journey. She had traveled long and hard, heavy with child, her heart filled with faith, though her body trembled from exhaustion. The people had not given her comfort. Suspicion and whispers followed her steps. She was young, pure, and chosen by Allah for a purpose she could hardly comprehend. The angel had told her of this miraculous birth, a child born without a father, a sign to the world, a mercy from God. And now, as the moment drew near, she found herself in a place unfit for a queen, yet destined for a miracle. There was no room in the inns, no place for her to rest. The town was crowded, filled with travelers who had come for the census, each family seeking shelter. Door after door was closed, and Maryam's strength was fading. Finally, she found refuge in a stable, a place meant for animals. The air was filled with the smell of hay, the sound of gentle beasts shifting in their stalls. It was not a palace, but it was a sanctuary. And it was there, in that forgotten corner of the earth, that the divine decree unfolded. The night was calm, yet heavy with unseen anticipation. The stars seemed to burn brighter, as though the heavens themselves watched in awe. Maryam عليه السلام, in pain and solitude, clung to her faith. She remembered the angel's words, "Be not grieved. Your Lord has provided beneath you a stream, and shake toward you the trunk of the palm tree. It will drop upon you ripe, fresh dates." She had seen the mercy of her Lord even in hardship, and now she trusted that mercy again. The cries of childbirth echoed softly through the stillness of the stable. And then, with the light of dawn just breaking over the hills, a child was born. Jesus, Isa ibn Maryam عليه السلام, opened his eyes to the world. There was no fanfare, no trumpet, no royal proclamation. Just the soft breath of animals, the rustle of straw, and the quiet awe of his mother. Maryam looked upon her son, her heart overflowing with love and tears. She wrapped him in simple cloths, and having no cradle, she laid him in a manger, a feeding trough for the animals. There the newborn prophet rested, wrapped in warmth and humility. The Lord of all creation had chosen this as his sign, that greatness does not need grandeur, that divine purpose can emerge from the simplest of beginnings. Outside, the world slept unaware, but far in the fields nearby, shepherds kept watch over their flocks. They were men of the night, accustomed to silence and solitude, often overlooked by society. Yet it was to these humble souls that the news first came. A brilliance filled the sky, and an angel appeared before them, proclaiming the glad tidings of a child born in Bethlehem, a savior, a sign, a light to guide the nations. The shepherds trembled in awe but were filled with joy. They left their flocks and hurried to find the child, just as they had been told. And when they arrived, they saw him, the baby wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. Their hearts knew that this was no ordinary birth. They bowed in reverence, their eyes shining with tears of wonder. This moment was a lesson in divine irony. Kings slept in their palaces unaware, while the poorest of men witnessed the greatest miracle on earth. The heavens rejoiced while the earth remained still. The creator of the universe had chosen simplicity over splendor, humility over power. Jesus, the son of Mary, came into this world not to claim thrones but to awaken hearts. As Maryam عليه السلام held her child close, she knew that the world would one day know his name, that his words would echo across generations, and that his life would shine as a beacon of truth. But in that moment, all she felt was peace. A peace that comes from trusting in God's plan, from knowing that every hardship carries a purpose. The pain, the loneliness, the doubts, all of it had led to this. The promised child was here. Meanwhile, in distant lands, wise men had seen a star unlike any other. It shone with a brilliance that drew their hearts toward Bethlehem. They followed its light across deserts and mountains, bearing gifts fit for a king, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. When they arrived, they were astonished to find the child not in a palace, but in a manger. Yet when they saw him, they fell to their knees. For in that moment, they understood that true royalty is not measured by earthly wealth, but by divine purpose. The one before them was greater than any king. He was a messenger of God, And so from the very beginning, the story of Jesus was marked by humility. His birth in the manger was not a mistake, it was a message. A message to the proud that God values the meek, to the rich that God honors the poor, and to the world that true greatness is born in submission, not power. He came not to live among the mighty, but to uplift the downtrodden. His first breath was taken among the lowly, his first bed a cradle of straw. Yet from that simple scene, the light of divine truth began to spread across the earth. Years later, when Jesus would walk among his people, preaching love, mercy, and faith in the one God, many would remember the humble place of his birth, the carpenter's son. They called him, unaware that the carpenter's son was the chosen word of God. His teachings would turn hearts away from pride and toward humility, reminding the world that every soul is equal before its creator. He healed the sick, raised the dead, and spoke wisdom beyond his years, yet he never sought worldly glory. He lived as he was born, with simplicity, compassion, and grace. His manger birth was a divine lesson that echoes through every generation. It teaches us that no beginning is too small for God's greatness, that the most extraordinary journeys often begin in the most ordinary places, that the measure of a life is not where it starts, but how it serves. And above all, it reminds us that God's plan is perfect, even when it unfolds in ways we cannot understand. Imagine that night again, the stars shimmering in silent praise, the wind carrying whispers of peace, the animals bowing their heads as if in reverence. The manger, though made of rough wood, became a throne of purity. The stable, though dimly lit, glowed with divine light. Heaven and earth seemed to meet in that small space, where the Creator's mercy took form in the arms of a young mother. The simplicity of the scene hides its immense power. A child, fragile and small, yet carrying the destiny of nations. A mother, exhausted yet radiant with faith. A world, unaware yet forever changed. The story of Jesus in the manger reminds every believer that God does not need the grand and the mighty to reveal his will. He works through the humble, the pure, and the steadfast. In that manger, humanity was shown that God's love reaches into the lowest places, that no heart is too humble for his presence. The King of Kings was born not among nobles but among animals, to show that his message was for all creation. The first visitors to honor him were not priests or princes, but shepherds, symbolizing that the message of salvation was for every soul, regardless of status. Every detail of that night carries meaning. The darkness represents a world lost in ignorance and sin. The light of the star symbolizes divine guidance. The stable reflects humility. The manger, contentment and simplicity. Miriam's unwavering faith stands as a model for all believers, trusting in God even when the world doubts, remaining patient when others turn away, and holding fast to divine promises even in the darkest hours. That night in Bethlehem was quiet, but its echoes reached eternity. The child in the manger would grow to speak words that revived hearts, to perform miracles that inspired generations, and to call humanity back to worshiping the one true God. But his first lesson, the one written not in words but in the very manner of his birth, was this: humility is the path to honor. The manger became a symbol of hope, a reminder that God's blessings often begin in hidden places. It tells us that greatness does not need recognition, that purity shines brightest in simplicity. When we look upon the image of the baby Jesus resting in the manger, we are reminded that divine light can emerge from the humblest corners of the earth. The story of that night is not only about a child born in poverty, it is about the richness of faith. It is about how God's plan unfolds quietly, beyond the understanding of men. The greatest events in history are often not the loudest, but the most peaceful. The birth of Isa alayhi salam was one such event, a miracle wrapped in silence, a message clothed in humility. Maryam alayhi salam, though alone in that stable, was never truly alone. The unseen angels surrounded her. The light of her Lord guided her, and the peace of faith filled her heart. She looked at her child and whispered prayers of gratitude, knowing that this miracle was a sign for all mankind. In her eyes, one could see both the weight of her trials and the beauty of her trust. She had endured the pain of disbelief and the sting of accusation, but now she held the proof of God's mercy in her arms. That night, heaven looked upon earth with compassion. The birth of Isa alayhi salam was not merely a historical event, it was a divine statement, a manifestation of God's power to bring life where it seems impossible, to bring light where there is darkness, and to exalt the humble above the mighty. Every prophet who came before had been part of this divine story, each one preparing the way. Abraham's faith, Moses' leadership, David's devotion, all led to this moment of pure humility. Jesus' birth in a manger was the continuation of God's promise, the reaffirmation that the path to Him is through sincerity, not status. When we reflect on this story today, we see ourselves in it. We see the trials of Miriam in our own moments of struggle, the silence of the manger in our times of loneliness, and the light of the star in our moments of guidance. We are reminded that when the world rejects us, God opens another door, perhaps not grand but blessed. The manger teaches us to find beauty in simplicity, to seek peace over pride, and to trust that even our darkest nights can lead to dawn. As the world would one day celebrate His birth, few would remember how quietly it all began. There were no golden cradles or royal decrees, only straw, stars, and faith. Yet that was enough. For where there is faith, there is divine presence. Where there is humility, there is strength. In the years that followed, the story of the manger became a symbol known across nations. It touched the hearts of kings and commoners alike. The image of Jesus, lying in that humble crib, spoke louder than any sermon. It told the world that the Creator Himself honors the meek and uplifts the forgotten. The Son of Mary came as a light to those who sit in darkness, and His first lesson was spoken not by words, but by the simplicity of His arrival. And even today, as believers recount the story of His miraculous birth, they find in it a mirror of divine truth, that God's mercy descends upon those who are pure in heart, that the greatest blessings come in unexpected ways, and that from the smallest beginnings can rise the greatest legacies. The manger in Bethlehem is not just a place. It is a message that lives on. It whispers to every weary soul, you do not need to be powerful to be loved by God. You do not need to be rich to be chosen for His purpose. The same Lord who brought forth His prophet in a stable can bring light into your heart, no matter how dark the night may seem. The humble beginning of Jesus, Isa, عليه السلام, is not merely a story of the past. It is a living reminder of faith, simplicity, and divine wisdom. It shows us that even when the world overlooks you, God sees you. When others reject you, He welcomes you. When you feel unworthy, He reminds you that worth is found not in status, but in sincerity. And so the story continues to inspire millions, echoing through generations as a timeless truth, that the most extraordinary miracles often come wrapped in humility. The baby in the manger was a gift to the world, a sign of God's mercy, a reflection of His power, and a call to live with faith and compassion. The night Jesus was born remains one of the most sacred and serene moments in human history. It tells us that even in the simplest settings the divine can dwell, that the light of God can illuminate even the humblest corners of the earth, and that true greatness, as Jesus' life would show, begins in the heart that bows before its Creator. The manger, the stable, the star, all stand as witnesses to a truth that the world still needs to hear. Humility is not weakness, it is strength wrapped in grace. From the very beginning, Jesus' life was a reflection of that divine humility, a message that power lies not in wealth or position, but in surrender to the will of God. And as Maryam alayhi salam looked upon her son, perhaps she whispered softly, "This is the will of my Lord." And indeed it was, a will that would guide humanity for generations to come. A will that began not with trumpets or thrones, but with the cry of a newborn child resting peacefully in a manger, the humble beginning of the one who would become a light for the world. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you.